So, thank you for coming. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our presenter, Linda Neal. She's a sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet and the co-director of St. Joseph's Place in Schenectady, a place of hospitality and prayer for the Hamilton Hill neighborhood. Sister Linda also engages in eco-spirituality work, presenting a workshop series entitled Encountering Earth, Reclaiming the Human in the Web of Life. And we're very lucky to have been able to share now in this second presentation from Lynn. And let me just say, if you missed the first one, you can still go online and view it because we recorded it just as we're recording this one. But while I'm saying that, let me just double check to make sure it is recording. It is.
It is.
Okay. So these workshop series are designed to help participants become more mindful of being responsible and caring members of the Earth community. Sister Linda holds a master's in religious studies and an MA in Earth literacy. She enjoys hiking and outdoor pursuits. And with no further ado, I'm turning it over to you, Lynn.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for. It's so great to see so many familiar faces, and I want to thank Patty and our own Carondelet leadership team and the Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph for partnering together to make this Laudato Si week so special. So today we've come together to reflect more deeply on living simply. And this program kind of picks up a lot of the themes that we talked about Sunday and goes a bit deeper with them. If you missed Sunday, it's okay. You know, these are things that have been part of our lives for a long time. So it's just really a time to reflect on them in light of Laudato Si. So I was reflecting on what does living simply look like? And I said, wow, this is a really challenging question because we are completely immersed in a consumer society. It's like asking a fish, what's the water like? Or a bird, what's the air like? Can we really see the stuff around us? So as I pondered this question, I thought about the song Simple Gifts, and I believe it has some very important wisdom to share in our quest to simplify our living. It's, I think, a celebration of simplicity that really sings out the message of Laudato Si. And so now Patty will play the rendition done by the group Cantus.
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. Simplicity is king, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning, we come round right. When true simplicity is king, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning, we come round. Till by turning, we come round. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of rock and simplicity is gain, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round.
"'Tis a gift to be simple. Simplicity is so kin to humility. Humble comes from the Latin root word humus, earth, soil. In the creation myth in Genesis, Creator fashions all of nature from the clay of the earth, Adamah. We are the same stuff as the rest of creation. How can we humbly, creatively take our place in the web of life? Jesus tells us that we are to be meek and humble of heart. But is that only in relation to other humans? It's really time for the human to extend this gentleness to all of creation. Humility means that we take a learning posture before creation instead of a posture of dominion. Consumerism, however, gives the human the right, the absolute right, to use nature as a storehouse of resources to be turned into commodities. Pope Francis cautions us over and over about this in Laudato Si. He says that since the market tends to promote extreme consumerism in an attempt to sell its products, people can easily get caught up in a whirlwind of needless buying and spending. This whirlwind has devastating consequences for the whole Earth community and for the wholeness of ourselves as human beings. Humility, I think, means to be open to wisdom, to life lessons. For a long time, humans have believed that we are the dominant consciousness on this planet. Our superiority has rebuffed what nature and indigenous peoples can teach us. Can we return to experience Earth as our primary teacher? Jesus learned many of his lessons from Earth. For example, in the parable of the fig tree, Jesus says, "Let the fig tree teach you a lesson." So let's just pause for a moment and think about an important piece of life wisdom that you've learned from nature. And I just have to share this about this piece, Earth Alphabet. When I first saw this, I said, isn't this sweet? A is for ant, B is for bat, C is for cat. But I was missing the underlying message of this, that Earth is our primary teacher. "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free." Living in freedom is the essence of being human. The highest freedom we can enjoy is freedom from the tyranny of our own wants. Jesus says that the birds and the grasses of the field, they really get it. Being is their living, and being means living free from anxiety. How is this possible for humans to live like that? Is it really? Jesus asks us to consider the birds and the lilies. So we need to ponder the lessons found there. We need to reflect on what consumerism does to us. Pope Francis explains that consumerism makes us self-centered and self-enclosed. It has the potential to empty our hearts. And he says, the emptier a person's heart is, the more he or she needs things to buy and own and consume. He cautions that in this mind and heart set, it becomes almost impossible to accept the limits imposed by reality. When humans refuse to accept any limits, we squeeze out all the other species. We create extinctions and we tear asunder the web of life. Pope Francis cautions that if we no longer speak the language of fraternity and beauty in our relationship with the world, our attitude will be that of masters, consumers, and ruthless exploiters, unable to set limits on their immediate needs. But consumerism is a magician. With a sleight of hand, it covers the damage in glossy packaging. Who of us would purchase a Kit Kat bar from Nestle with a picture of a dead orangutan on the wrapper? The connection between Nestle and deforestation of the Indonesian rainforest is not obvious. But according to Greenpeace, Nestle is still sourcing palm oil from companies that are illegally logging the rainforest and killing orangutans. And yet, Nestle says it is moving to 100% sustainably sourced palm oil. It takes commitment to know the truth in order to be a consumer who lives free in such a system. Sister Marion's lovely cat of happy memory, Sunny, as he meditates on the garden. And this is a poem called The Gift of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go down and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And where we ought to be is to be a relational member in the web of life. Again, consumerism can fracture all these relationships. It causes us to see everything in a utilitarian way. Creation is treated as a storehouse of things for our use instead of as relations deserving our awe and respect. Nature is the source of our manufacturing needs and the depository of the waste that ensues. Other humans are looked at as cogs in the machinery of manufacturing our things. They are nameless and faceless, and their lives matter only in how cheaply they can work so we can get a better bargain. If we are relational, then we know where our merchandise comes from and what is the real cost that is borne by Earth and humans in negative externalities. And we saw that very powerfully in the two films about plastic. Negative externalities show up as waste and pollution of our air, our water, and soil. They show up in workers laboring in unsafe jobs, which threaten their health, and in some cases, their very lives. Awareness is where we ought to be. Sometimes the choices are so hard, and we have so many choices. Recently, I had this overwhelming experience of choice as I tried to buy a cup of coffee. I was in a quick check, I had my cup, and there in front of me was an array of 25 different kinds of coffee. I counted them. And I was paralyzed. It's like, oh, what do I do? So I make a choice, and then I turn, and there's 12 kinds of creamers and different sweeteners. And I was done in. I reflected on the blessing of choice and the curse of choice. I just wanted a cup of coffee. And I juxtaposed my feelings that day with how I feel in a forest with great diversity. I feel uplifted and stimulated, not smothered. What does this kind of constant exposure to choices and all different kinds of options do to us as human beings? Sometimes the choices are not clearly between good and bad. They're between bad and less bad. We need to educate ourselves about the products we use most frequently. We need to inform companies that we want them to change certain things. Sometimes we need to boycott products. Our purchases, Pope Francis says, have tremendous moral weight. And again, we're doing that with getting in touch with companies and stores this week to talk about plastic. This piece we saw on Sunday, a tiny whispering sound. Pope Francis points out that many times being distant from ecological problems, not really encountering the people or the ecosystems that are so impacted, can lead to a numbing of our conscience. If we become disconnected from Earth and those who are most in need, we are in danger of continuing the devastation. This piece, a tiny whispering sound, recalls the story of the prophet Elijah, who heard the voice of God as a tiny whispering sound. The blessing of choices can be that they are those tiny whispering sounds that call us to deeper reflection about our lives and our relationships. How do we listen to these whispering sounds in the cry of the earth and in the cry of her poor? Many times we evade the issues by looking at Earth's problems superficially, Pope Francis says, and then we carry on our destructive vices, trying not to see them, trying not to acknowledge them, delaying the important decisions, and pretending that nothing will happen. How do we engage to discover how our decisions and actions impact the environment and the marginalized? How do we stand as witnesses, not only to the destruction, but to what is possible when we try to live a simple lifestyle? And again, we're going deeper with this during Laudato Si week, but these are things that we've been working on for a long time. This poem is a section of a poem called Worms Waking by Rumi. This is how a human being can change. There's a worm addicted to eating grape leaves. Suddenly, he wakes up, call it grace, whatever. Something wakes him, and he's no longer a worm. He's the entire vineyard and the orchard too, the fruit, the trunks, a growing wisdom and joy that doesn't need to devour. So how do we wake up and learn we don't need to devour? Pope Francis as always holds out hope. He says, yet all is not lost. Human beings, while capable of the worst, are also capable of rising above themselves, choosing again what is good and making a new start, despite their mental and social conditionings. We are able to take an honest look at ourselves and to acknowledge our deep dissatisfaction and to embark on new paths to authentic freedom. And Pope Francis holds up Noah as a symbol of one good person who restores hope. And I always like to remember there was also Mrs. Noah and the family who did that. And when we find ourselves in a place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. Living simply is not negative. It's not just about not buying, not owning, not having, not enjoying. Living simply is really about living fully. Living simply is about living into our inheritance as children of this amazing and abundant cosmos. These pieces are called My Mother's Dresses, and they celebrate Earth's abundance. Our mother planet lives in great abundance everywhere we can see and in the tiny hidden places where humans cannot see with their naked eye. Earth spills forth in astonishing and extravagant abundance. This abundance of beauty, of awe, of imagination, and creativity is ours. The price is taking time, slowing down, letting go of things, and taking hold of the gifts of creation and the gifts of our spiritual life. I think Annie Dillard summarizes this in a great quote that Sister Marion has put here. She says, the extravagant gesture is the very stuff of creation. After one extravagant gesture of creation in the first place, The universe has continued to deal exclusively in extravagances. The whole show has been on fire from the word go. Slowing down and taking time in our society is a tremendous culture. But perhaps at this time when we've been sheltering in place, we've had time to practice that, slowing down, taking time, noticing. And what have you noticed about how you're dealing with that interiorly? Has it been a joy? Has it been a sorrow, a real aggravation, or all of the above? But we have had this retreat time in a way. So the simple life calls us to slow down and to spend time with our neighbors and kinsfolk, the forest, the stream, the bird, the bear, the cat. We are urged off of paths cemented and blacktopped to touch earth, to kiss the sky, to embrace water, to know the company of field and fen. Mother Earth cares for us, feeding us, healing us. We are awakened from a place where food comes from the supermarket, water from a faucet, light from a lamp, and fascination from a computer or TV screen. We are beckoned back into the family of creation, and we are roused from our illusion of self-sufficiency. This connection to the entire cosmos is a contemplative attitude toward life. The Holy Father quotes Ali al-Khazwas, a Sufi writer, in saying, quote, "The universe unfolds in God who fills it completely. Hence, there is mystical meaning to be found in a leaf, in a mountain trail, in a dewdrop, in a poor person's face." This mystical meaning of creation can only be found in Sabbath time. The Holy Father stresses the importance of Sabbath rest and worship as a way to heal all our relationships. This rest is part of our very essence. It protects our actions from becoming empty activism. It also prevents unfettered greed and isolation that makes us seek personal gain to the detriment of all else, he reminds us. This rest must extend to all of creation. We cannot drive creation the way she is being driven right now. Everything in creation needs a rest, Pope Francis reminds us. This is actually a rendering of Cynthia Bourgeault contemplating her cat and probably other things. Our mystical vocation is critical at this time. Contemplative living is vital. Sabbath moments in our day give us time and space to contemplate and to enter deeply into our true self, into divine mystery which throbs through the entire cosmos. From this place, we see with the heart's eye and we hear with the heart's ear. Whatever method we use to enter this place, this is a gift to ourselves and to our world. Here, I would like to offer Cynthia Bourgeau's notion of the cosmic centuries. She says this: a cosmic century is one who offers intercessory prayer. His or her entire body becomes a lightning rod for the energy of divine compassion. Human yearning and divine blessing ebb and flow wordlessly across this sacred meeting ground in deep and purifying exchange. The planet has always been held in its orbit by these solitary sentries who take on this great work. His or her work casts a circle of protection around our fragile and beleaguered planet. And I would add that I think we need to be cosmic sentries perhaps together, either virtually or in community, so that this great shift can happen in our society, because it really needs contemplation to do that. Contemplation moves us to action in a dynamic flow, and truly compassionate, effective action means looking at life and then being driven back, if you will, into a God-centered, always daring, prophetic, and contemplative place, which in turn turns us back out onto the world to use our gifts for the healing of the world. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. Simplicity, humility, contemplation, and contemplative action open us to amazement, the threshold of beauty. We are connected so deeply. Awe and amazement in the splendor, riches, and grandeur of creation. This is the way we live fully into our human presence. Amazement doesn't need defining or explaining. It's really hardwired into our being. What we need is time and space to allow it in our lives. The potential of amazement surrounds us everywhere. In the face of another, in a pet, a sunset, a flower, the flight of a bird. It's everywhere. We are enveloped in an amazing universe. Pope Francis says that when we stand awestruck before a mountain, we cannot separate this from the experience of God. I think that play is amazement made visible, expressed in joy and abandon. And entering into play brings us to that place of being a child. The simplicity of losing ourselves, the ecstasy of being taken out of ourselves into delight and into the moment. Play is dancing, frolicking in what gives us deep joy. It is much more profound than mere amusement or entertainment. What's your favorite mode of play? This is a poem by Mary Oliver. The sun. Have you ever seen anything in your life more wonderful than the way the sun every evening, relaxed and easy, floats toward the horizon and into the clouds or the hills or the rumpled sea and is gone. And how it slides again out of the blackness every morning on the other side of the world like a red flower streaming upward on its heavenly oils, say, on a morning in early summer at its perfect imperial distance. And have you ever felt for anything such a wild love? Do you think there is anywhere in any language a word billowy enough for the pleasure that fills you as the sun reaches out, as it warms you, as you stand there empty-handed? Or have you too turned from this world? Or have you too gone crazy for power, for things? To turn will be our delight, till by turning, we come round right. Turning, dancing, living simply in our culture does demand a great interior turning. Joanna Macy expresses this delight so wonderfully in this quote: "We have received an inestimable gift to be alive in this beautiful, self-organizing universe, to participate in the dance of life with senses to perceive it, lungs that breathe it, organs that draw nourishment from it. It is a wonder beyond words. And it is, moreover, an extraordinary privilege to be accorded a human life with this self-reflective consciousness, which brings awareness of our own actions and the ability to make choices. Let us choose to take part in the healing of the world." End quote. Pope Francis encourages us to turn to gratitude for this gift. Our existence, not our possessions, fill us with deep gratitude, with thankfulness that bubbles up from the bliss of being. It is gratitude that turns us away from the frenetic pace of buying and amassing things. It is gratitude that opens our hearts, minds, and spirits to perceive the marvels of living and to say, "This is so much more than enough. Thank you." And so let's just take a moment to be with this wisdom.